Alright guys, so since there's been a lot of talk of war with Russia over Ukraine, where it seems like the entire West is going to gain up on Russia if there is conflict with the Ukraine. Now, I am sorry for the map here. This is just a map that I found and I'm going to use. And right here, I'm going to be using paint as a marker. I apologize, guys, for the quality of this. I am not a military strategist, though I do like strategy. This is just personal opinion, and I am just going to be making this video, just going to kind of wing it for people to have a minor understanding of what could actually transpire here. Now, as for nuclear weapons, that could really just change everything depending on their placement. That is a different story. But if these countries are going to keep it the conventional way without those kind of things, which I doubt it will stay conventional, it will eventually reach the weapons of mass destruction. I guarantee that. Especially with the personality of certain nations, this is very possible. And that would be a complete destruction of human life and our planet like you wouldn't believe. The natural world as we know it would be completely altered. Now, I'm going to begin. So Russia comes in and invades this area right here, or attempts to invade this area right here. And not only will Russia invade this area right here, it will continue to invade, and it will invade up here. So what's going to happen is that Russia will go into Ukraine. They'll go into the southern parts and the eastern parts of Ukraine. What's going to happen is that Russia will most likely hit a lot of the eastern countries up here. If there is conflict with NATO, which there will be. It might not be right away, might be like in World War II, just like Hitler, where they let him roll in for a little bit, and then it truly begins. There will be problems here, definitely. There will be a lot of loss of life here. And there would be a great conflict all over this line with Russia and these countries here towards the east. Now, the Middle East would definitely get involved. And as we know, there has been a lot of conflict in the Middle East for quite some time now. China will get involved. And as a result, India will get involved. These countries may be invaded by China as buffer zones. Taiwan would definitely be taken. The Philippines would be invaded. Japan would be invaded by by China. Now, this is if Russia allies with China, or if China stays neutral, which they should, then they will not bother invading these areas. But in the midst of the conflicts, they may actually invade some of these areas to try to take buffer zones and establish bases. And with India, it would be a very careful tread, but I almost guarantee that conflict would begin because of those invasions, that it would be too close to India. And also India would be pressured by allies to invade. And India has personal issues with China. Pakistan would definitely be drawn in the conflict. And which side, I am not exactly sure. Every country has close connections with all these countries, except for China, that truly has the tension with the United States. And Russia not really having too much tension with the United States, besides when the political situation causes that tension, will still be in direct conflict with the United States because of all the noise that the United States has been making towards Russia. And all the threats of the NATO bloc, which are all these nations here and other allies, will be in direct conflict with Russia. And that's the problem with NATO. Russia, if it really got into a problem with the United States, armed conflict would definitely happen. And I'm sure that Russia would come in this way into Alaska, which might be an easy win for Russia at first. And because of Canada's stance against Russia, Russia may proceed a little bit here into Canada to try to take British Columbia, or at least this little coast here, to try to buffer it. But they'll most likely try to hang on to Alaska. The problem with Russia is that if they go in here into British Columbia, which doesn't seem like much, no matter how much subversion is in there, their armies would be completely annihilated in the mountains of British Columbia. And I'm telling you, they would be annihilated. Their troops would be absolutely destroyed. And it's not from the Canadian Army, it would be from the United States Army. And also a coalition that might be joined by the Latin American bloc in defense of America. Depending on how good the ties are with Latin America. And I don't believe that Latin America would want to exactly ally with the United States. They might take opportunity to go against the United States, which would be a double front. Specifically with Mexico, that has a lot of history with the United States. So the diplomacy of Biden might not catch up. But there may be an alliance and a coalition that might help the United States, especially within manpower, to fill up the ranks of the United States Army. So an invasion here would be very disastrous for Russia. An invasion here into this Eastern Bloc would be disastrous for the Ukraine and a lot of these Eastern nations. But it would be an absolute disaster for Russia because Russia's capital is very close. It would be hit. And the rest of Russia, which is very rural, would not really be able to keep up much unless it's been getting reinforced for a long time. And that's where the Middle East will kick in, and that's where China will kick in. A betrayal of the alliance between Russia and China might come in the form of China betraying Russia and allying the West as an opportunistic strategy, and would basically move into these areas. Basically, Russia would have to be abandoned because China going against India would be a severe problem. If Pakistan stays neutral, but it would be drawn into conflict, we don't know which side it would go onto. No matter what the political situation is, the opportunity is a big thing, especially when it comes to saving your nation and your people, and the political aspect saving itself. An invasion here into the Philippines would be somewhat disastrous, because this is an entire continent that would absolutely go against China. And the diplomatic situation between China and Australia is not very good. These countries would try to remain neutral. They may supply manpower to either side. But the Philippines would definitely be a point that would be hit because of its diplomatic and strategic area. Same with Malaysia. Same with the Solomon Islands on behalf of China. They'll try to take it. They'll try to claim brotherhood and similarities amongst the Asian peoples. Sumatra as well. But there's not really much here that can happen. And these governments might want to stay neutral to the very end, and they might just try to avoid conflict or let militaries pass through. This would be a situation. China outnumbers Australia big time. But Australia has a lot of land to fight on. Even if they're nuked, they got a lot of places to go. Their population is somewhat sparse. But they can still gain a lot of power, especially if foreign nations send in that manpower. Australia will be able to fill its ranks and be able to defend itself very successfully. China would be basically screwed because India, Australia, and as well as American support and maybe even support from these countries would fill in the ranks and support Japan. Japan and China do not have very good cultural relations, history, which might be brought up specifically from China, which would be a great mistake from China. So China might want to remain absolutely neutral. These nations right here would, I believe, absolutely be allied to Russia. A lot of these nations right here would absolutely fight for Russia. Turkey, we don't know what Turkey would look like. Turkey is somewhat opportunistic, and they may fight for the West or might want to stay neutral. Saudi Arabia, all these countries, not really much they can do. Iraq, there's not much Iraq can do. Iran is not very friendly with the West right now, and they would have ambition to fight, but might also want to stay neutral, but may be dragged into the conflict regardless because of its zone. So these two countries might be dragged into the conflict, but Turkey has a lot of good diplomatic status with a lot of these countries, so it might remain neutral. But with conflicts like these, I don't believe so. Especially if the armies are big enough, they're steamrolling, they will use parts of Turkey. They will use parts of Iran regardless. Saudi Arabia would also be a pretty good strong point where it would collapse. There would be nothing Saudi Arabia can do no matter how good its diplomatic ties. Egypt would be drawn into conflict as well, but also may be used as a battlefield. Libya, Algeria. Now the problem here with these countries right here, this is probably one of the hardest countries in the West, but it's not very strong right now. Spain. France is a very strong country, but its diplomatic situation within itself might not support the drafts that it needs to back up what it's saying. The British as well have that situation. So the United States, all these areas could see a lot of riots, a lot of problems internally, not wanting to get into this conflict. And that might be a drawback unless we see what we're seeing now, where they absolutely become a police state and force everything, or somehow sway the people into supporting a conflict like that. Greenland's Denmark here would be really nothing. It might be a bit of a battlefield, might be a buffer zone, bringing in bases, bringing in weapons, bringing in convoys of good weaponry and manpower through these things. But there's already a good land bridge here that is good enough. And this might just be little buffer zones and just trying to inch yourself closer to each continent. These northern countries right here would definitely be drawn into conflict if Russia decides to invade them and take control of these points right here in Denmark. In Norway, Sweden, and Finland. Finland, which would definitely be a target, and parts of Norway would definitely be a target here. Latvia, Lithuania, all these places up here would definitely be in conflict as well, due to Russia. Russia might just basically show the same behaviors as it did when it was when they were basically the Soviet Union, or whatever you call it. Sorry if I'm not very good at these terms. Africa would definitely be a battlefield, but it would be hard to reach Russia. It would be hard for Russia to reach it. So basically, all this area would be controlled by the West. So Russia, ultimately would be like Germany. It would almost be the equivalence of Hitler. They would be very powerful, very strong. They'll steamroll countries here in the east, but maybe even try to take zones in here, especially in the Middle East, Alaska. But it will not work. Russia will absolutely be annihilated. Absolutely. And I haven't even got to that point yet. The Eastern Bloc here will take a lot of blood, right? But the West and Central Europe and Western Europe here, they have a lot of power. And a lot of power that Russia doesn't know about. Russia will know about it, yes. There's a lot of subversion, there's a lot of spying, there's a lot of looking into it. But in reality, these are hidden powers that are basically one country right now. And Russia is basically fighting from this point right here, from this half, this little corner here. It's where the main populations are. And basically maybe get some allies in these areas down here. They'll be basically facing these very tightly, densely populated areas that have a lot of history, a lot of military history, and they have a lot of power. Individually, when you hear those videos, Russia versus Spain, Russia versus France, Russia versus Turkey, obviously Russia is the boss. But united, Russia is in dire threat, dire danger. And I doubt that they'll be able to get all these nuclear bombs and all this stuff because of counter attacks that will happen to that. There's a lot of technology that people are very unaware of. And as well as being able to shut down electronics, which is a pretty big issue in this war. This is not like World War II. Excuse me. This is not like World War II where, Hitler had to, just march his men, prepared or unprepared or however he did it, through these lands raw. There's a lot of technology, and as well as there's a lot of good logistics and a lot of good technology where it's not going to be what Hitler or the French army faced. Moscow would be hit, and they would hit this pretty hard. A lot of Russia will be left alone, and basically a lot of the Russian power would have to retreat and would have to surrender. Now they would be at the mercy of these Poland and Ukraine and some other nations that might want to take their revenge and would be allowed to take their revenge. Basically, where Russia would be just reduced and crumpled. Right here, if they try to invade Canada, their army would be absolutely annihilated. It would be like Napoleon trying to go into Russia. It would be a disaster for Russia. Russia won't be able to take these mountains. It's a disgustingly huge place. It's a very empty place, but it can be filled up pretty quickly. And I am sure that a good defense has been made in these mountains without the knowledge of Russia. You got to understand that the way that these lands are, the city centers. Even if the city centers are taken, it's not much Russia can do. There's not much Russia can take, except for just a bunch of empty land that they're going to want to hold and then basically be annihilated in. What would happen here as well is by invading these northern countries, they would also exact their revenge, which is a pretty serious thing for the north of Russia. It would be something that, for example, Russia being cocky and very proud. You gotta understand that tides do turn. History does come and nip you in the butt, because people remember the things that happened in the past. They remember the communism. They remember what Hitler did as well. So these countries have a lot to prove up here. They have a lot to prove. They have a lot to say. They have a lot of people that would want to fight, that would want to defend their culture, that would be very disgusted from either side, depending on what their views are. And the Slavic, unity that Russia wants to impose on these countries, where it says you're all like us, I would believe would crumble. Serbia would try to go with Russia, but Serbia would be absolutely engulfed. It's got enemies that don't like it. And Serbia's also got a personality that's not very respectful. And it would not work. So Serbia will want to either stay neutral or basically just be a loyal puppet and just get destroyed. Absolutely. I'm not saying this with being personal. I'm just being honest. I might not be accurate on some things, but I'm being very honest. There's no way that Russia can take the United States. No way, unless it allies these countries right here. And if the United States intends to invade these countries to buffer them, no matter what they do to them, it would be a nasty guerrilla fight. Nasty. It would be disgusting for the United States. The United States would have the toughest time it's ever had in its history. And I really mean that. This here is like Vietnam all the way. You see Vietnam up here? Down here? This is all Vietnam. All the way. There's nothing. There's no military base that can take that. Especially if you anger the people to that point. It just will not happen. These people will fight to the absolute death for their nations. And even though they're not tested in history, they got that personality. Same thing with Spain and Portugal. Very strong cultures. France also has that, but these cultures are somewhat suicidal in their defense. And they will fight to the absolute deaths. But then again, we don't know. Now right here, this would be a disaster. There would be nothing they can do here in the east. This is a protected zone. Absolutely protected. Africa would basically just be used as manpower and nothing but land for Russia to try to take, even if it takes all these countries. There's nothing it can do. Russia's invasion of the Ukraine would be an absolute suicidal mess. It would be disgustingly stupid. And it wouldn't even be cool to watch in the future. It would just be like Russia just thinking it, that doesn't understand. There's no propaganda, there's no spying, there's no type of subversion that can fix that. Nothing. Because all those efforts would just be basically turned. It would just be a mess. It would be a lockdowns. It would be all those things. So it would be an absolute problem for Russia. Russia can't take on the world. That's what it would have to do. It would have to take on the world. There's too much good diplomacy happening here. It's too complicated. The English-speaking nations got it basically on lockdown, I would say. They're way too dispersed. See here. Way too dispersed. Way too dispersed. Way too dispersed. Way too much. But dispersed in a very strategic way. And as well as the alliances that they have, and why in the world would Africa want to ally with Russia? Why? Because of past problems? Because of what Antifa and BLM is saying? No, that will not happen, no matter what. And people got to understand that how the current politics is right now. It's almost, it's veiling everything. Everything is being hidden. It's being put in a propaganda disaster. Russia can't really do much with that. No matter how much spying, no matter how much it knows, it's being changed up every single day. Biological weapons, nuclear weapons, yeah, that's a possibility. But once that starts, I am sure that all this proud Russian spying that has been doing, or how they say, the Russian spies, you understand that they have been getting spied on and infiltrated as well. That's why these buffer zones have been being set up very confidently, with excuses that Russia doesn't even understand. A lot of people might say, hey, you know what? You don't understand. But if you look at it really deeply, just alone these little markers right here, you'll see. Even if they unite Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan and Iran and China into this big block, you got India here. India will never, in its world, unless it's really that opportunistic, turn on its allies that speak English. Never. They will fight. They will fight. And Pakistan, in a sense, might actually join with India no matter its differences, because of history and also self-preservation. But at the same time, Pakistan might join these blocs and try to hit India. That is a possibility. These southeastern countries right here, this part of Asia right here, might also go with China, or be forced to go with China. A lot of buffer zones can happen here. There might be even strategic alliances due to nationality and ethnicity. But Japan is a huge problem. Japan is a proud nation, and it would definitely allow, or not allow, or just be very problematic for China. But again, Japan has issues with the United States, but there'll be nothing that can really be done to the United States from Japan. There's not really much. Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, yeah, they're really not much, but there's still enough. The Philippines, all these areas, got to look at Australia again. Now from South Africa, there's a lot of stuff happening around here. It's just way too far. It's way too far. There will be nothing Russia can really do except for just waste its resources. This isn't Hitler. You're not fighting off the French army or Hitler. You're not fighting one of these huge nations, but tiny nations compared to, and to think the damage that these nations in the past caused to Russia, especially Germany when it was at its last foots, and what it did with basically just Spanish soldiers and what they could throw in there was an absolute mess for Russia, and Russia was lucky because of this coming in. This coming in. This coming in. That's something that is pretty serious. So having all of this, even if this is neutral, which might still supply this, combined with this, and this, and this would be an absolute mess for Russia. Russia wouldn't be extinct. It would be forced into absolute surrender. It wouldn't be humiliated like Germany was, I don't think. But it would be forced into a massive surrender if this was really fought with the intentions of sides defeating each other and not just some new world order trick, if you know what I mean. Dabbling into the theories of conspiracy, no matter what we think. There is a lot at play here, and Russia's almost the last vestige, and same as China. They might ally each other, but there's not really much they can do. The loss of life would be extreme. Speaking of nuclear warfare, boom, like, okay, what are you gonna, like, you gonna maybe destroy Europe. Okay, then the nukes will come back. Look at this tight, packed area compared to all this. All of this. All of this. The West can basically move into any part of the world, basically, and can inhabit it with its militaries. Where Russia has just, this is like Germany in a sense, but it has, yeah, all this, but all this is very cold. This is very inhospitable. Yes, the Russians are the masters of the cold, but this is very inhospitable. A lot of technology doesn't survive very well, and no matter how polar bear you are, you don't take that, you don't just roll into your own lands that easily. Especially if all technology is shut off, especially if you're fighting now a battle of attrition, a battle of manpower. Yeah, China has a lot of manpower, but its manpower would be absolutely annihilated. To the point where it's going to have to be left with maybe regular populations, and in there it might get a little bit smarter, but that manpower would be almost against China. They would have to feed and supply and get and connect with. You shut off the power here, yeah, but you're going to shut off the whole world's power. Where all the power, in a sense, can be shut down here. All the electricity can be cut. It just has to start. Dun 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 dun. Bum 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 bum. As opposed to here, okay, bum 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 bum. What else? Okay, bum bum bum. Okay, a little bit, bum bum bum. What's going to happen here? Okay, a little bit here again. Dun dun dun. What's Russia going to do? It's going to fight bravely. It's going to be very, very, very proud. And it will die brave, and it will die proud. So will a lot of these men here and women. But it'll be a lot, yes, on the front lines, but it'll be very minimal. Look how much you can supply. It can just keep coming. It can just keep coming. Well, here, it'll keep coming, but every time something happens, a chunk disappears. A chunk disappears. A chunk disappears. Here, what are you going to do? Disappear chunk? Okay, you're going to take a chunk there. What's going to happen is that chunk's going to be taken right back, including the chunk of the population that was sent here to do it. Putin, as cool as the guy is sometimes, as much as we see We Love Russia videos and all this support for Russia, you know, that people have, and people say, oh no man, you can't take on Russia, they're so tough, they're so crazy. We've seen their videos of Russian road rage traffic and Russian guys kicking butt and stuff like that. And Russian mafia and the spies and what they did to Hitler and waving the communist flag in Berlin and no, come on guys. Oh, they took all this, look how big it is, look how big it is. Yes, that's what works against you. These are all established nations. 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 All these are established nations. Where Russia is one established nation with sparse populations and part of that established nation. It's not really an established nation. It's still a nation that has taken a lot from other peoples, where it would get a lot of rebellions, insurrections, where areas would turn on Russia and say, I don't want this. I don't want to get nuked. I don't want to get invaded. I don't want to get carpet bombed. I don't want to get chemical warfare done on me. I don't want this. They will begin to turn on Russia. Russia might even see troops within itself. Troops within itself. Siberia, how proud, yes, but the thing is that the subjection that these people have had also from Russia. Also the amount of enemies that Russia has within what it has done to its own people. As well as communism, the history of communism. If we just brought that up like Hitler and used that as propaganda and treated the communism like we treat Hitler and just keep nailing it, it'll bring up a lot of blood, a lot of past blood. See, I'm not a strategist, I'm not a military strategist, I'm not just a person here thinking with common sense. Okay? I don't think very well sometimes, actually. I'm not very smart. But if I can look at that, you don't think these people have looked at that? England, what is England really going to do? England's a pretty smart nation. You know, it's very good at controlling. It has a lot of bases as well. It has a lot of influence. You know, and for a small nation, it's a pretty powerful nation that's willing to go. And it's on an island. And look at all these buffer zones. Yeah, it might get taken. But for how long? Look at all this. Unless there's a secret, crazy alliance here, where all of South America comes in and descends upon the United States, which I believe will not happen. South America's not like that. Central America's not like that. Cuba might. Venezuela might have a little bit of an issue. But these countries might even be taken on by its own people here. Colombia doesn't like what Venezuela is doing. It's fought against Venezuela's image, what it has right now over it, for over a century. I come from these people. I know. Panamanians, yeah, whatever. Mexico is tough. Brazil is tough. And Brazil has very good connections to the United States. You have to understand that. They don't have no interest in Russia. Argentina and Chile might have a little bit of communist past it, but no, that communist thing's very hated. Nothing Russia can do. If it goes against NATO, and it goes against the world, which will basically happen, no matter how well allied with China it is, it's going to be a disgusting mess. I suggest Putin watches this video, and China watches this video, and sends all its little troops back, and lets Ukraine get into the NATO bloc. That's it. Move your guys back. Just forget about it. Apologize. Okay? Make some more We Love Russia videos. I'm not being cocky. You know why this is a problem? Because if you start wars here, you're also messing with my people. My people could be drafted against you. My people will not be happy. My people are also down here. I know these people. I know what they're like. I know what Spain's like. I know what France is like. I know the history. Germany might not seem like much, but I know what they're like too. I know what Italy's like. It doesn't matter if you got all these friends out here, all these people, or Serbia. It doesn't matter. The past Yugoslavia or whatever this is, all these nations right here are not very united. They got a lot of hatred within themselves. These Balkan nations are not very happy with each other. There's going to be no united coalition of power that's going to take Italy and France and Germany from here. Not going to happen. They're going to be annihilated. And if they're part of NATO, why in the heck would they do that? That's stupid. It's betrayal. And its own people would not like it. They're pretty modern people. They no matter how much love they have for Russia, they have love for their own culture first. I hope I didn't step on too many toes here. But living in a Western nation, I'm obviously not going to be friends with Russia. If Russia invades and does all this, what do you expect me to say? That I'm just going to kiss her butt? I don't know what's going to happen. I guess I would have to surrender. But that's not going to happen. Let's just look at the map. Just look at the map. And here it is. Russia doesn't control this. This is controlled by the West. There's nothing. Where is it going to come? There's blocks. This whole thing is blocked. Okay, you'd have to go in this way. You can't go in this way. The only way you can go is this way. You send your convoys in on this ocean, they'll be picked apart. You get very close to South America, and the United States might decide, along with the power that's already here, to empower these nations. And these nations will unite. All these nations, right here. If you attack one of them like that, and decide to take him and execute its people and subject them and laugh at them, you do not understand. They will unite. Spain will unite with them. You don't understand this. There's also a lot of things happening. A lot of pushes to unite these nations within themselves. There's a lot of recognition of what's been happening. They don't want to be colonies. They don't want to look like the Middle East. And they don't start problems with other people. But let's just forget about that for a sec. Just this alone. There's just too much. It's too much. Look at that. Like, yeah, Russia's big. It's big. Yes. So is this whole thing. This doesn't seem like much, but this is bigger than this. It's way more populated. And it has a lot of power combined. And with NATO, that's basically one country against this country. Okay? A big problem. Again, China here with India. And I believe that India would be defeated. But India would have a lot of support. India would ask for that support. And I know that the Indians are very tough. They're very historically tough people. They're very noble people. And they will defend their nations just like Spain here. Just like Iran would. Just like some of these Middle Eastern countries have attempted. But the more powerful ones that we haven't really got into would. You got to understand that that's a shit fight. India is potentially one of the worst shit fights you can have. And India will fight to its absolute end. I guarantee you that. The Hindus will not allow communism to come in and execute its people. It will be a flood of disaster. You want to nuke, it would be a problem. India is capable of nuking back. They got that personality. It'll just be a gong show. It'll be a gong show. An absolute gong show. And now that they have started the battles on subversion, coming in here, helping ruin our economies, causing a lot of damage and everything. So by the way, I don't know if you've seen this part of the map, but Alaska over here, yeah. See that? This is what I drew here. This would be a mess. The British Columbian Islands, yes. See? Sorry, not the islands. I mean like the whole freaking British Columbia, along with its islands and Alaska. It's a mess. It's a mess. You got to take every single little island, which is a mountain. It's a large landscape, enough to fit armies and supply. You gotta understand that how green and lush these areas are, how full of supplies. Look at the populations here that need supplies. Russia has a lot of supplies, but we got way more supplies. The United States still has a lot of supplies. A lot of raw materials to make weapons, to feed armies, to feed other continents if it has to. They have it. They have the manpower as well, especially out here to make their diplomatic strategies very well. That has to be understood. It would be a complete shit show for Russia. And yeah, it would be a shit show for the West too, but there's not much. Not really. It would be almost within themselves here. China would just completely waste itself out here. Waste itself. Russia would waste itself here. And then look where its capital's not up here. Okay, its capital's not up here. And I don't have issues with China. See, its capital is very close to around here. What do you think is going to happen? How many nukes do you think you're going to be able to launch? There's also a lot of counter nuke programs. A lot of stuff happening here. A lot of technology that people don't even know about. Look at that. Yeah, sure. Sure, it might just add more land here to Finland. And Norway here, they might want to take some stuff, you know. It'd just be a mess. Russia would be completely divided and split up and basically raped. Okay, guys. You guys gotta understand that warfare is extremely brutal. It's extremely unforgiving. And when people are angry and they got the power, you have to understand what happens then too. Revenge is a pretty big one. We've known here with these nations, France, Germany, Spain, Britain. We know in Turkey. We know Italy. We know. Ukraine, Poland. Poland's angry. Has a history. Very good people. Very independent people. The Ukraine, you know, very good people. People that might sway this way, but there's not really much they can do. There's too much anger now. You know, there's only so much pro-Russian you can do. So, guys, I hope this video brought some understanding on how brutal this can be. If it was really an actual fight, like an actual fight to the death, you have to understand. Canada's not chirping for nothing. Canada almost invites it. You come in here with your armies, Russia, after trying to take Alaska here. You don't understand. It's not about the manpower. It's about the terrain. Just like Russia. This isn't flat terrain. This is disgusting terrain for Russia. Every single mountain peak, every single hill pass can take a silo. Can take any military base. Military bases can be littered here and created within months. Within weeks. Disgusting for Russia. Brutal. These people would have such a terror in their lives. And they would regret any of what they would start. Any proud people here going, oh, we'll take them easy. I do not think so. Senor, I do not think so. Too much to respond in my Spanish accent there. No, senor. No matter how much Russian love you have, there's nothing you can do there. Nothing. Nothing. Except for just cause a mess that will eventually come back to you. About 1 million fold. China would be made an example of. And the hatred that it's caused to itself from Mongolia, from these nations, from these buffer zones, from Taiwan, from these, you know, look at Korea over here. Oh yeah, Korea. Yeah, look what's happening here. It's a buffer zone. And they're gonna fight for their independence. But at the same time, who knows what would happen? There's not much. What is this going to add? We know what Nagasaki and Hiroshima did. Today, that can happen a lot. And there can be a lot of counters to any missiles launched towards the west. Look at it. What are you going to reach? When all the military bases are from the west, the buffer zones are already set. The Cold War for Russia shouldn't have ended if they really wanted to conquer the world or do this again. They should have continued with it, but they didn't. And if they did it in a different way, pretended to collapse to justify that communism is now gone, that the justice has been had, no. It's nothing you can do. That is serious, guys. That is absolute serious. This is just my little screen right here. Might not be the most cleanest. This little program here, this little paint program. I hope that brought an understanding. There's no effing propaganda that can fix what we're seeing here. This is a reality. Let's look at the map a little bit more here. Here's this. Okay? This whole chunk right here. Okay? Huh? A little bit of Iran, maybe Turkey. I don't think Turkey's gonna want to get into that shit fight. Okay, guys? Look at that. Okay? Look at this. Ooh. Still bigger, right? Ooh, still bigger, right? Ooh, still bigger, right? No. Ooh, still bigger, right? Ooh, still bigger, right? That big fat circle here versus all these circles here. What are you gonna do with nuclear bombs? Once you start launching nuclear bombs, you know how unpopular you're gonna become? What do you think that this isn't StarCraft? You ain't some magical Protoss, okay? You're not the Zerg here, my friends. This is not, okay? You're not supported by droves of aliens, okay? You know what? Nuke this? The nukes? What do you think? The nukes are just gonna be like, just one nuke's just gonna, like, what do you think is gonna happen here? All the fallout. Whoever nukes is just dead. Are you gonna move to Greenland? Make a sequel to the movie Greenland or something? No. It's done. Finished. No. You can't. You don't got nukes that big. Are you kidding me? What are you gonna do? How many nukes can you drop until you contaminate yourself? All around these borders. Are you crazy? You crazy? Stupid. Absolutely stupid. Absolutely stupid. This right here is absolutely stupid. Russia. Stupid. Okay? Yeah, Biden's stupid, okay? Guy can barely string words together. But these nations are not stupid right here. Okay? It's not stupid. They got it under control. They got the whole thing under control. Well, you just got control of your little area here like Germany did here. And expanded a little bit and got crunched. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.